Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, having retired from the Irish Navy, Andy Mackin has created a global professional services company which is on track to achieve revenue in excess of €50 million this year. Andy also has his sights firmly set on the Mackin Group becoming a publicly listed company in the next 10 years, and he joins us now to share the secrets to his success. Andy, talk to us about the Mackin Group and the services which you provide.
Good morning, Karl. It's great to be with you. The Mackin Group, Karl, is basically a professional service business, B2B. We've got two pillars to the group. So on one side, you've got the environmental health and safety consultancy and training business. And on the other side of the business, we have the Mackin Talent business, which is staffing and recruitment on a global level.
And what's the split between both divisions?
It's probably about 70% talent now and 30% EHS as the businesses have evolved over the last 2 years.
How big is the group today and how have you achieved this level of growth?
I think there's a lot of hard work into it, Karl. The business now, as we stand, we're in 11 countries. We've 250 people globally, with a very large footprint in the United States, the UK, and Ireland. And
how have you developed that footprint internationally?
I think a lot of it, Karl, comes down to the relationships that we build. Like one of our core values in Mackin is relationships matter. I'm a firm believer of treating people no differently than you'd like to be treated yourself, whether it be in business or as a person. And I think that is carried through to all the team globally, in that when we do business with people, we're there to give them good service, good quality service, so that when they are talking to their fellow managers or fellow colleagues or other peers within different organisations, that they're talking about us in a very positive manner in terms of the relationship that they have with us.
And provide us with an insight into the acquisition that you completed in the UK and the impact that had on the growth.
Yeah, it was a key one for us, Karl, because obviously the company that we looked at, Greybridge, Certain Select, they're based in the Midlands in Leamington Spa in the UK, and we had been watching them for a couple of years in terms of the performance. They're very similar to ourselves in terms of their work ethic and how they treat and work with their clients. But more importantly for us, it was the possibility of stepping into the AI, cybersecurity, digital transformation space in terms of staffing and recruitment, because for me, Karl, that's going to be the growth area. Definitely AI and cybersecurity, but the digital transformation, it goes hand in hand with it, really. That's going to be the growth spurt for the next 10, 15 years, I reckon.
What is your revenue target for 2024 and what's your plan to achieve that?
The revenue target for this year, Karl, will be $55 million, and we achieved just under $40 million last year. So we've kind of split it across the four pillars that we would look at within our growth strategy within the Mackin Group. So you'd be looking at, number one, you'd be looking at your existing market, and number two, you'd be looking at your existing market with different services to the clients that you have. The third one is new markets, new developments within those, and the last one then is acquisition. So we've just kicked off very, very early stages of our second acquisition. That's hot off the press, Karl, so you'll have that scoop. But it's a long process. I mean, it could take up to 9 months to get that over the line if it actually concludes. So that will be a part of the growth strategy. And then, like I said, just developing the other markets and the existing markets. We divvy it out right across the globe. So nobody is saying one team has to produce $15 million. We break it down and give them achievable goals and targets that they can set. And that usually it served us well over the last few years doing it that way.
And on the topic of acquisitions, talk to us about your integration process when you acquire a business and how you actually integrate it then with the group.
Yeah, we take a two-pronged approach to that, Karl. So it really depends. Like a company that we would look at, we say from revenue from $500,000 up to $3 million. We might over a 2 or 3 year period integrate it within the group. That's our philosophy in terms of that. A company that would produce maybe 3 to 5 million plus. If they have a strong identity and a strong brand, we might leave that alone, which we've done with Greybridge. We've left them alone with their own identity and just sit them under the umbrella of the Mackin Group. And then what we tend to do when they're in then is integrate our own processes and systems and procedures to help them with their efficiencies, with their processes if they haven't got any, or to try and enhance them if they have some in place, but they need to step up to a new level. So there's two different scenarios really.
I understand that one of your long-term aspirations for the group is to achieve an IPO in the 2030s. What needs to happen in the meantime for the Mackin Group to be ready for that?
The short answer, Karl, is we need to be at 150 million by 2030. Because you have to have a certain market cap to actually float. The Nasdaq, for example, I think is 200 million. The Nasdaq 250 under that, then I think is at 150. So if you're going to float, you have to be at a certain level whereby you'll be able to maintain those growth levels that will make you desirable for people to hold a share in your business. So ultimately the ultimate goal is to get to that 150 so we can actually put the wheels in motion to actually achieve that goal.
And of course, leading a public company is very different to leading a private company. How are you going to prepare yourself for that?
A lot of training and a lot of research, Karl. I've kind of started that process anyway. I do like to do a bit of reading. Just before COVID started, January 2020, I took myself up on a challenge that I'd read a book a month. Prior to that, I probably read about 5 books in the previous 15 years. I wasn't a big reader. So I read every morning from Monday to Friday, 30 minutes. I bookmark it. And by and large, at the end of the month, plus or minus 2 or 3 days, I read a book a month. So I'll be adding a lot of that kind of stuff into my kind of reading material now over the next couple of years. So by the time it comes around, I should be hopefully well versed in it.
And 4 years ago, you were shortlisted for the EY Entrepreneur of the Year programme. But how did your participation in the programme benefit both you and the business?
Oh, I think it's just the confidence and the growth that being around those like-minded people give you, Karl. Guys that I would have watched on TV like Bobby Kerr and Sean Gallagher on the Dragon's Den and things like that. Meeting those guys and having coffee with them and just sitting with them and chatting. The funny thing about them is like they're human like yourself, Karl. I mean, we raise these people up in the media and on TV to be really kind of titans of industry, and they are for all intents and purposes in their own world. But when you sit down and have a coffee with them, they're really genuine, nice guys, and very, very willing to share and impart knowledge and experiences that they've had, both positive and negative. So I think it's been hugely beneficial for me on my growth journey as a professional and as an individual.
And if you could go back and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't think I'd do anything differently, Karl. And somebody asked me that question recently. They said, did you ever get up and have a bad day? And I said, I think, to be fair, since I joined the Navy back in 1985, I don't think I ever worked a day in my life. And what I mean by that is I loved what I did. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't something that I hated getting out of bed for. I look forward to getting up and getting at it. And I'm growing and learning all the time. So it's been a hell of a journey so far. And I'm looking forward to what the next 10, 15, 20 years bring.
And Andy, how did your experience in the Navy influence your leadership style?
A couple of key traits that I brought with me, Karl, definitely, and probably didn't realise it until I was in business. The discipline would be one. Just the process around discipline in terms of seeing the job out, getting it done, whether it takes you a day, a week, a month, 6 months, a year, but just seeing the task out and how to dissect that down into a process of, it's like climbing a mountain, Karl. If you keep looking at the top of the mountain, you're going to go, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to make this. But if you just take the first step and then the next step, like 2 or 3 months down the line, you're 5,000, you're a mile, you're 2 miles ahead. So, I mean, it's just those kind of key things that I brought from the Navy definitely helped you in business.
And interestingly, you actually started Mackin at the same time as being in the Navy. So how did you juggle both?
Well, it was very easy at the start, Karl, because like any business when you start off, the first thing you need is clients, and I didn't have an awful lot of them. So I was very fortunate in the Navy at the time. We used to get a half day on a Wednesday or a half day on a Friday, one or the other, when you came in from sea. So I used to go off and help some of the guys that I would have known in the Defence Forces. One particular guy, Tim McSweeney, set up his own electrical business, and he asked me would I come in and just give him a hand drawing up his documentation and just keeping an eye on things for him. So I might go in on a Saturday afternoon or a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning and do a small bit for him, and then just gain that little bit of experience. So by the time it came round to actually my retirement, I set up the business in 2004, October 2004, and subsequently we'll be 20 years old this year, and I retired in November 2006. So probably for about a year and a half, Karl, I kind of just built it up slowly. using those times, and then obviously you get a couple of months with the old contracts within the Defence Force, and you got a couple of months at the end of your period to decide whether you were going to come back or not. So I was able to kind of do a little bit more full-time stuff then. So when it actually came down to retiring then in 2006, I probably had about 5 or 6 clients that I was kind of dealing with regularly, and probably another 4 or 5, maybe 6 clients that were popping in and out for different bits and pieces during the year. So that kind of kept me going. And then it's just, when I came out then, it was just head down and just build on that, and we just build it slowly every year after that.
And when did you get the big breakthrough?
The big breakthrough came in 2009, and it came from, it was a good friend of mine actually, became a good friend. I was doing work for a company in Cork in Photo Wildlife Park, and the guy that was managing the project was actually from Dublin. So he came down and met me with the client and introduced me and said, right, look, Andy, you're on your own, off you go and get that job done. You know what's to be done. And he kind of project managed it, and we kind of built up a bit of a rapport. He had actually served in the Defence Forces in the Army. He'd spent a little bit of time then in Hull Bowl in the Navy, so we had kind of things that we could relate to. And we just built up a really good friendship over the kind of years. That was probably from about 2007 to 2009. And he rang me up one night then in an October evening, cold, wet, and I remember well. And he just said, Andy, how are things? And I said, how are things, Dominic? And he goes, do you want the good news or the bad news? So I said, give me the bad news first. And he said, listen, I'm leaving the company. And I said, well, feck you anyway. I was looking forward. We were just building the relationship. And he said, look, the good news is, he said, I'm the new security and safety manager for a really top global multinational company. He said, will you come and do some work for me? And that was the kind of next iteration of the business, Karl. That went from probably us doing at the time in 2009, maybe 180 or 2,000 euros a year, going to 350 the following year, and maybe 500,000 the year after that. And then working with those multinationals to get other opportunities, because you're working with different people who move on to different companies.
And what has been the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome along the way in business?
In 2009, prior to that nice phone call I got in that October from leaving, we were very close, Karl, to actually winding the business up. Well, not even winding the business, but we were nearly getting evicted from our office, and that wasn't going to look too good to some of our clients. So, again, one of those kind of sessions where I was just taking a few minutes to think and saying, look, how are we going to get out of this? And it just, like, intuition, or call it what you will, something just came and said, look, why don't you just go to your long-established clients, explain the situation, and see if they can pay you ahead of time. So we reached out to about 15 or 20 of our clients and said, look, we're a small bit of cash flow problems. You have a slap bang in the middle of the largest economic recession that we've known since the Depression. And in fairness, I would say about 80% of our clients just paid us early, allowed us to get the rent sorted, allowed us to get another few months, and got me to October. I got that phone call, and then we moved on.
Looking back at that particular dark time in business when maybe liquidation was on the horizon at that stage, how did it change your perspective then going forward?
I definitely think we became very, very more prudent on the finance side of things. And I'm not saying we weren't prudent, but we had our checks and balances. But just lead time into clients who owed you money, lag time in terms of getting their invoices out on time. At that time, we only had 3 employees in the business at that time, Karl. So I was probably out on the road most of the time. So I would come in with a bunch load of notes for Trish and Claire in the office and say, look, we need to get these invoices out. But they were doing a multitude of other things as well. So we definitely tightened down on that. We really tweaked and honed our processes and our tasks around the finance element of it, and definitely became a little bit more prudent in how we operated. And it certainly helped the business. But again, look, these are things that you learn. I mean, I came from a military background, Karl, and I never knew how to run a business. So I was and I am constantly learning on my feet as we go. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't learn something, whether it be how to do a shortcut on a keyboard or a new app that we can use to enhance efficiencies. You're always learning, always learning.
And Andy, do you see your people as an army, a sports team, or a family?
I would have said from my start of the business, definitely a family, and we still do. We still do refer to each other as a family every now and then. But I would say a sports team. I mean, we try and really get everybody prepped now and everybody trained and really focus their minds in terms of efficiency and productivity and how to be the best version of themselves can be. And if they're doing that, then ultimately the business is going to be the best version that it can be. So I think a highly efficient team is the way I would look at things now, yeah, for sure.
And it certainly sounds like you've built your business from the ground up due to having good relationships and developing on those, and then secondly through the acquisition path. But what have you done from a marketing perspective that has assisted your growth along the way?
And the honest answer to that, Karl, is up until about probably 2 or 3 years ago, we hadn't done an awful lot. Referral marketing in terms of word of mouth would be how a lot of our business is generated. And still to this day, I would say a good probably 50-60% of our business is generated through referral word of mouth. So like people have an experience with us, they like working with us. We would always ask them at the end of a project or a process of recruitment, listen, is there anything that we could have done better, just for feedback for ourselves? And we'd like you to be open and candid with that. And they are, and they do. And we try and tweak that and improve it. That really kind of brings us forward then in terms of how we are going to be better ourselves in performing our work.
And finally, Andy, what advice do you have for people listening this morning that are just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey?
I would say network and get to know people as quickly as you can. And I don't mean sell your wares. I mean, when you go to a networking event, go to hear other entrepreneurs that have been successful or seem to be doing things well, because you'll always learn something from those guys. I would always encourage people to, if they make a contact at a networking event or at any event, if they meet somebody that they find interesting or feel that they could learn something from, bring them for a cup of coffee. You invite them. You say, look, I'd love to take you for a cup of coffee and hear your story, because there's nuggets of gold in all those guys and those ladies' entrepreneurial journey, and they're only too happy and willing to share those experiences. And I think any budding entrepreneur would actually, it could do worse than doing that, for starters anyway. And then I would think after that, just learn as much as you can about your industry and really concentrate on giving a good service and being that kind of subject matter expert within your field.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Andy Mackin from the Mackin Group, and it's certainly one to watch.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.